is we're going to kick off with just some quick hits, if you will. In other words, talking about some things that are come up that might be of importance. But we still have several people coming in, so give me just a minute here. There we go. All right, looks like that's good. Share the screen. So I wanted to do this morning is start off with just some basic, what I call quick hits, some things that have come up just recently, and share those with you guys as well here. Just some basic things. So in this one, we're going to cover several little things, and then we'll jump into the policy and procedures manual, and we'll actually do that via Kahoot primarily. All right. So to start off with, there is a website that I'd like to share with you guys. I'm also put it in the chat for you, so you can grab it that way if you want, or you can grab a picture of this one. This is with NAR. It's the Real Estate Forecast Summit. Did anybody actually watch that? Anybody listen to it? Real Estate Forecast Summit? Okay. So the link that I just threw in there, the link that's on the screen, if you grab that, you can go back to it. It's on NAR's website, and it's about an hour long, and it's their predictions of what's going to happen in 2022. But a small part of that was based on demographics. And I want to share that with you this morning because I think it's really important for us to understand what's happening and some of the key things that we could actually look for as we were trying to work with this. One of the things they had on there was that the first-time home buyers, there's a small uptick there, and you can see right here, up 34%, right? It's up to 34%. So it was at 50. First-time home buyers was at 50, and it's gone down over time, and now it's coming back up. And with everything else taken into consideration, I think that's an important part of it. But let's take a look at one of the other slides they had, which is this one. When we look at home buyers, first-time home buyers, the median age is 33. First-time home buyers, median age is 33. Repeat buyers, and when we talk about repeat, that may be not just their second home, but a second property maybe, right? That's at 56. But I'd like to focus on the 33 for a second. When we talk about, that's the age of home buyers, according to the NAR survey, right? The reason that's important is if you take a look at this slide, if you take a look at this one, we're dealing with the millennials. And right now, the age 33 has been the key age for home buyers for the last 4 or 5 years. I think it was the last 5 years is what they said. But look to the left of that. So with millennials, we still have another 5 years of them buying properties and being in that key age group to work from. So when you're trying to plan your marketing and what you're looking for and what you're trying to work with, that's a really strong market right there, that age group. Does that make sense? So that's one of the things I wanted to share with you was that aspect of it, because that also tells you, in my opinion, what kind of marketing you might want to look at, where are you going to find those buyers and sellers, right? These are buyers we're talking about here. On this side, we get into first-time home buyers and what makes up that household. And again, here, if you look at first-time home buyers, the married couple is about 50%. But look at, as things are swinging, we're looking at single females, for example. They're back on the uptick. And for years, in the GRI classes, I've talked about the fact that single females is one of the things that we've, that's been on it. It was on a pretty good increase and then it went down a little bit, but it's coming back up now. So that's a market. And when I do the GRI class, I talk about that specifically. So when we're trying to make specific decisions on our marketing, if I'm trying to, for real estate, attract single females, where are you going to go? What are you going to work with? Right? Just food for thought. And that's 20%. 20% of the buyers, first-time home buyers, were single females. That's a pretty good chunk of the market, right? So are you, and I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying, are you looking at that market? Are you looking at that perspective? And this just helps you decide what you're going to do marketing wise. Like, take a look at the single male portion of this, if you will. There's not a whole lot there. And that's again, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but generally speaking, the women are leading that pack as far as trying to get the home established, get this is what I want, their future, and etc. And it's coming off pretty strong here on the numbers. One of the other things that came out of this, and again, this is from the NAR Summit. One of the other things that came out of it was buyers' use of agents. 87% of the buyers said they wanted to use an agent. 87, that's still up there, right? Previous owner, for sale by owners, is going down. Agent is going up. So buyers understand the value of having an agent there. All we have to do is make sure that we are conveying that message as well. What is our value? What do we bring to the table for that buyer and trying to help them negotiate? And that's something you might want to take a look at as far as what do you bring to the table for that buyer. 87% of the home buyers that were surveyed with NAR said they would prefer to work with a real estate agent or broker. On the seller side, this was an actual survey question. Do you want a full service agent? And to you and me, there's a difference between what we do and discount brokerages. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but they'll list a property for sale at a discounted rate, but they do very little. Right? So there's a big difference between that and us. When you look at full service, 90% of the sellers want a full service agent, somebody who's in this to make it. And which is, again, that ties back into what we try to do, in my opinion, when you're looking at a full-time agent versus a part-time agent, somebody who actually can give the business the time and effort that needs to make it work. And then for sale by owners, 7%. So these are numbers you can actually use. This just came from NAR's. They had it this past week. 7% are for sale by owners of property being sold. 7% of those are for sale by owners, which is a horrible percentage. As you're out talking to for sale by owners, that's something you might want to throw out there. Majority of the people. So think about that. If I talk to 10 for sale by owners, only one of them is going to go by themselves, right? So, any questions about any of those? Anybody? Can you guys hear me? Gustavo, okay, I got some movement there. All right. All right, the slide that you're looking at right now, I put it up here because just like I said, quick hits. There's a few agents, a couple of the new agents have been putting posts out there, and this is the proper way to use this. If you use the word realtor, it always has to have the trademark out there, the R, if you will, out there. And if you have a problem with it, you can copy and paste it in or whatever. If you're using it for marketing or something of that nature, please put that in there the way it's supposed to be. And it's supposed to be all caps. Anytime you use the word realtor, it's supposed to be all caps. If it was with a name, it would be like it is in the diagram there with Jack Miller. And this is something as well. You can pull this from NAR's website. If you go to nar.realtor and on the right-hand side, click on more, And it actually has a little quiz there that you could take. And we've done that in this class before. There's a little quiz there on how to use the trademark and what's proper and what's not. Like, for example, can I use the word realtor in a URL, in a domain name? And the answer is no, right? But you see agents that try to do that from time to time. If you guys have any questions, please just unmute and jump in. I posted this yesterday in Facebook, the two Facebook groups. One of the key issues here is the date on the upper right-hand corner needs to be 11/08/2021. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 4 transactions where we've used outdated contracts, and one of them was a contract from 2018. And the problem with that isn't just that it's an outdated form. It's that the contracts were changed because of changes in the law or state property codes or whatever it was, right? So there's a reason for those changes. It wasn't just an arbitrary change. We want to make sure that we have the correct contract. On Texas Realtors, if you go to texasrealestate.com and on the legal and ethics on the left-hand side of that, if you go to frequently asked questions, there's questions in there about an outdated contract. So if you're the listing agent, let's say Alex is the listing agent, and I have the buyer and I do it on an outdated form and I give it to her, her job is to present it to the seller, make sure that the seller understands it's on an outdated form. And if there's going to be changes made, she can communicate that to me, that there's going to be changes made, and put it on the correct form. If you're the listing agent and the buyer's agent delivers to you a form that's outdated and there's going to be changes made, you make those changes and put it on a new form, but with the seller's permission. The seller may, and it's their choice, opt not to worry about it if there's not going to be any changes and take the offer as it is. That's their choice. It's always their choice. Everybody okay there? But I highlight the date on the upper right only because when some of the contract that was used the other day from 2018 was a farm and ranch contract. If you were using zip forms, the templates are automatically updated with the forms, unless, let's say I created a transaction for Karina, for example. If I, as an agent, created a transaction for Karina, and in that transaction, I used a template, right? I created a transaction for her, and then 6 months, a month, a year, whatever goes by, she decides she wants to buy another property. And I go in, since I already have all of her information in there, I just go ahead and I grab that and I start a new contract. That file is going to have the old forms in it. It'll update the templates for new forms, but it will not go in and update an old file. Does that make sense? So because that's one of the transactions that we had, the agent said, well, it's an investor and I just use their old file. I get that. I've worked with investors. I have templates set up for investors. I would encourage you to do that. But just know that when you go to put a new one in there, you're gonna have to bring the new form in because it's not gonna, because it's already been used. Pretty good? Because it's the same thing. I've opened up a transaction and copied, because you can copy the document. That even saves less work, right? Inside that transaction. But again, you end up with the wrong form. A couple other contract things, if I could, please. There was a conversation about the survey. Once again, please remember that that first paragraph is in 3 sections. The first section just says that the seller is going to provide the old survey and the T47, right? That's what the first section says. They're going to do it, and they're going to do it within so many days. If they don't do it, which is the highlighted part, and I have circled on there the key words like fails, right? If they fail to deliver it, then the buyer can order one, but it's going to be at the seller's expense. And it tells you that right there. And it has to be no later than 3 days before closing. So there's 3 parts to that paragraph. The first part, if the seller does provide the survey and the affidavit, and they're not acceptable, that's what this buyer or seller block is here. Because, and I bring that up again because in working with a couple new agents, just randomly, why did you mark this box? Well, because if they don't get it, they can order it. No, that's not what it says. It's there's 3 sections there. Everybody good?
I do have a question. Which one can you use if you don't have the survey and your seller don't want to pay for it?
Right, if I have the listing and the seller doesn't have the survey and they don't want to pay for one, I'm going to put that in, agent remarks in MLS, and you would use number 2. And if there's a change to the contract, let's say the offer comes in, I write the offer up and give it to you, Claudia, and I have on there that the seller is going to pay for it.
I'm sorry?
Let's say I write up an offer for one of your
Mhm.
listings. I have the buyer, you have the seller. I write up the offer, and I put on number 3, right? That the seller is going to pay for it. You have the seller, and your seller looks at that and says, "I'm not paying for it." Then you would cross out 3 and
Mark.
change that to 2, and then put initials on there. But then our buyer would have to initial as well before it becomes
As
a
well.
contract, because you have
Okay.
to have everything in writing, initials, signatures, and communicate acceptance to have a contract. Everybody good there?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, so this is the last part of this on the contract portion of it. This is from the third party. This is paragraph 2B. On 2B, it says if the property does not qualify or satisfy lender's requirements. That's the appraisal, insurability, and repairs. We've talked about that before, right? This is paragraph 2B on third-party financing. So it has to meet those 3 things. It has to appraise, it has to be insurable, and it has to meet the repairs, lender's required repairs, which would be called out on the appraisal. If it doesn't meet one of those 3, then it can be terminated, right? Not later than 3 days before closing. Not later than 3 days before closing, the buyer has to notify the seller, and it tells you exactly how to do that. Why is that important? Why is paragraph 2B so important? And the reason for it is if you're doing conventional,
right? You lose your earnest money.
you can't, yeah, you absolutely, you can, absolutely. But one of the reasons I wanted to highlight it. Go ahead.
1 day before, like if they know it doesn't appraise and they terminate it 1 day before, the buyer loses, right? Or no?
Right, because the third-party financing says it needs to be done 3 days before. So it's, again, watching the days and making sure we stay up with those days is important. Dinah, to answer your question, the third-party financing says 3 days before. They have to do it 3 days before, right?
Yes, thank you.
But is that something our client really wants to argue about? And I mean, legitimate, they have a good reason to say, no, I'm not going to release the earnest money because the contract says 3 days before and it's a day before. We're not going to do that. But if they're the seller, that could create a problem for them on the other side when the next contract comes in, et cetera. It's easier sometimes just to say, you know what, get them out of here. But that is what it says, yes. But the reason I highlighted 2B is because on here, this is on the conventional portion, the lender's right to terminate, right? And on this form, number 3 here, it says, in addition to the buyer's right to terminate. So this is an additional condition, in addition to the buyer's right to terminate, according to paragraph 2B, which we just went over, the buyer can terminate the contract within so many days after the effective date. Now, why would they be terminating it? Well, right here, it's because of the appraised value. So if I'm looking at the appraised value, I may not have that until 25 days, 30 days after the effective date. And again, that's a conversation just this past week with an agent. I think the other agent was telling them they needed it they could only put 10 days in there or 15 days or something like that. Our job is to take care of our client. If you put 10 or 15 days and then you don't have the appraisal, how the buyer's out because they didn't do what they needed to do within this time frame, right? So we want to make sure that we read that and understand it. And then again, it's the appraised value according to the appraisal obtained by the buyer's lender. If it's less than, so that a buyer can still, this is there because on the third party financing, FHA and VA, if it doesn't appraise, they can still buy the property. That's their choice. But there's nothing there for conventional, and that's where this came from. So this gives the buyer a right to still buy the property if they choose to, right here, even if it's a low appraisal. It just lays it out for you. And you decide, you and the buyer decide what number goes in there, and then the seller decides if they want to accept it. But make sure they have the money to cover it if it goes to a low appraisal. So for example, if the sales price is 100,000 and they're doing an 80-20 loan on it, that means they have 80,000 financed, 20% down, and the appraisal comes in at 70. If they don't have $30,000, they're not going to be able to get that loan. They're not going to be able to make that purchase. But if we don't have that written in here at 80 then instead of 70, then they're locked into the contract. Does that make sense to everybody? Anybody? Oh, yes.
Yes.
All right.
Mac, that's only on the conventional case, right?
Yes, this form is only available for conventional. It tells you that at the very top of it. It's only for conventional. FHA and VA, you cannot lock the buyer in to the contract. They have that option. Third-party financing says that. If it doesn't appraise, they can move forward if they want to, but you cannot in any other way. Somebody, again, another agent was wanting one of our agents to write up something saying the buyer is going to buy this no matter what, because the buyer wants it no matter what. But we can't do that. We're not attorneys. If that's the case, then let the attorney write it. Tell the buyer or the seller to get an attorney, let them write it up for them. But we don't want to take that on. Remember, if you're writing something that says if this, then that, right? If the property doesn't appraise, the buyer will still buy it. If this, then that, then you're practicing law, and we don't want to get into that. And then this last one here, on this one, I pulled this from TexasRealEstate.com, legal frequently asked questions. And this is the consumer saying, the broker did not fill out the contract properly. They did not fill in an effective date. Does that mean that the contract is void or invalid? And you see the attorneys from Texas Realtors, what they put in there. And actually, I'll take that back. I pulled this from Trek, actually. I pulled it from Trek, not Texas Realtors. But what it focuses on is they're not going to say whether it's valid or not, but what they will say is the agent could be, because they didn't complete the form accurately, could be considered negligent and subject to disciplinary action because they didn't have an effective date on there. And you know why I'm talking about that. Some of you, yes? All right, we're good.
But if
Cool.
you miss it, you create an amendment with the date, with the effective
Yes,
date?
absolutely. You do an amendment, you and the other agent talk about it, make sure you guys are on board, make sure your clients are on board, have them sign it and say this is to establish the effective date for this contract, and you just write that in special provisions and get that filed with the title company. Because that's where everything starts at, or pretty much everything in the contract starts there. Are any of you familiar with this instructor? No? All right, so there's a website right there at the top, HTTPS, Social Selling Made Simple. And you can go to that website. She has podcasts on there. I've listened to several of them over the last few days. She's a national instructor. I've actually shown some of her stuff before, but never like this. That website that I have on there, that link actually has all of her podcasts on there. I'm sharing that for you because one of the ones I listened to this past week was about the CRM and the purpose of a CRM. And the guy that she's interviewing, she does interviews. It's not her talking, right? She's doing interviews with people. And the guy that she's interviewing is explaining why a CRM is so important and how they're used. And he gives out some really good ideas on how to use them. In addition to that, one of the other things, and again, I'm not trying to promote her or what she does or anything, but the information is pretty good to listen to. one of the things she's done is this, and this is one of the things I've shared before, and I want to share it one more time here at the end of the year, because this is not her, this is somebody she's worked with, but Kathy Fowler actually created a Google account for a home, helping an agent. They set up a QR code for it, tied it to Linktree. So when you put your information in to register for the open house through Linktree, it automatically sends you all those documents. It'll send you the property flyer, the seller's disclosure notice, and a buyer's guide, right? And the way they have it set up is a QR code to sign in for the open house. And if you were to scan the QR code, you'll see they're not going to send you anything, right? Because this is an old one, but you can scan that and it will still open up. It will still open up to this, which she has in Google Docs. You can see right here at the top, it's in a Google Docs file. Is all she's done with it. But it's tied to Linktree, so it automatically goes over there. Yes, ma'am. Is there a question? All right. So anyway, just know that it's there. It's actually fairly easy to do that, to set that up, because you can do the QR codes in Canva and the Google Docs, tie it all together and make it work, and have an individual Google account for the property, each property, which looks pretty awesome. Anybody have any questions about any of those? That was what I consider the quick hits. Anybody? All right, so jumping into the policy and procedures manual, I put this on the screen for you so you can just take a quick look at it. Please take a look at number 3, company core values. Professionalism, service, respect, and commitment to growth and mastery. Professionalism, service, respect, and commitment to growth and mastery. And I think in general, we have that covered. But I wanted you guys, this is in the policy and procedures manual, and mission, vision, and company values are pretty important across the board. And you should probably have something like that that says this is who you are and the way you do business and what you expect. Anybody have any questions there? Comments? Nope. All right. So then what we are going to do is I'm going to share another screen with you. And we are going to play Kahoot. So you can grab your phone. You can go online, go to kahoot.it, or you can scan the QR code that's there. And again, you don't have to play. I have 14 questions set up, and what we're actually going to do is we'll run through some of the questions and some of the examples and discuss how they apply to us. And I randomly went through and just pulled things out of the policy and procedures manual that I think agents should be aware of, to try to emphasize just some key things we're working on. All right, there's 41 people here. We have 16 signed in. Anybody else?
Wait a minute for Duncan. He's like struggling with his old computer.
Yeah, I'm having trouble like entering the.
Me too. I don't know if it was an update on my phone, but let me, I'm trying to get in.
Okay. If you are using if you're using Kahoot.it, it's just goes straight in. Usually goes straight into the from the internet straight into the app. But if you're using Kahoot app, it's a whole different ballgame. And in fact, let one of the things as an instructor, if you're using Kahoot app, it'll actually save all the questions for you too. So if you're not using it now, you might want to download that later, but keep it up to date. Of course, we have a cat there. Of course. What an awesome party. By the way, for those of you that were in Mission, I have a really good video that I'd love to share with you guys sometime, but
Uh-oh. So do we, Mac. We can play that game.
yeah, no, ma'am, no, that's okay.
Oh.
I seen that post. Oh. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Unless you yell at me, I'm gonna count to 3 and then I'm gonna hit start. Like I said, we have 14 questions to go through, and we want to cover those. 1, 2, 3. All right. Does the policy and procedures manual have a model open house consent form? Answer should have been yes. Yes, 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 yes. So that form is in the back of the policy and procedures manual. If you have not looked at it, know that it's there. It's designed so that you have permission. It gives you permission to contact them. That's the whole idea behind it. Cool. Oh, I wonder who ALE is. You must submit to management a copy of the email signature box that you use for business for approval. Your email signature is supposed to be submitted to management for approval when you first come on board. That's actually true. So one of the things that, like, for example, the ones I look at, if you have a link in there to the IABS, I'll click on the link to see if it's working. So if it's not, you'll hear from me that way. But the other thing is to make sure that we have all the information that we're supposed to have. Like, for example, you're supposed to have an address in there in each one of them in your email signatures. And if you're, depending on what you're using, you may have 2 or 3, or like at one time I had 5 different signatures. One for initial buyers, one for buyers that we're working with, one for sellers, one for other activities. So.
I thought the blue was true. I didn't look.
It's okay. Sometimes I do that just to confuse people, but it's all right. An email messages related to a real estate transaction need to be kept. Email messages related to a real estate transaction need to be kept. It's absolutely true. Anything you have going on in that transaction, either as it's happening or afterwards, everything you have for that should be put in a PDF and put in the file. And again, the best place to store that would be right there in your zip form file for that transaction. If you have one place for everything, it makes life so much easier to work with. The next one we have, there's movement going on. All computers must have antivirus software, whether they are owned by the brokerage or the agent. Yes. And
I think
again,
that was just purposely putting in the incorrect answers.
right, that's, yeah, it's all right. There's always one. When we talk about this, the antivirus software, even if you're not going into the office, it's not about the office. It's protecting the consumers, the people, because every time you do something, you're attached to Remax Elite. You know, I've made comments about that. Driving down the wrong way down a one-way street, you're attached to that brokerage, right? And because I used to have magnets on my car, I don't do that anymore. There's a question in the chat about how long are the emails required to be kept. Files are for Trek. Files are required to be kept for 4 years. And again, that's why zip form, if you put everything you have for that transaction in zip form, you have that file and it's being stored there. And zip form actually keeps it longer than that. But we need that sometimes because occasionally we have to rebuild the transaction. There we go. Performance standards. You must have a minimum of 1250 in sales volume in a 12-month period. And again, that is written right into the policy and procedures manual underneath performance standards. What's expected of you as an agent with RE/MAX Elite? And there's some others on here that when I go through this, I would like to highlight. Maybe for example, just have a prepared and well-rehearsed listing presentation. Anybody that's been in the business has probably sat down at a table with a seller with just a notepad and roughed it, right? Can that be done? The answer is yes. Is it professional? No. And we all know better. So we want to build a good, solid listing presentation. You have access in RE/MAX.net. You have access to tools there that allow you to do that. We've also tossed out Breakthrough Broker, has slides on there that you can use. Make sure that you have one that's well rehearsed and you're ready to go with that. I attend training and continually strive to improve. You're always seeking to do better, right? (12.7) Assistants must attend all office meetings. But they're just an assistant. That's absolutely yes. And I've shared a company I was with in Austin. It was a team that I wasn't on the team. I just helped them out once in a while. But they hired a lady just to run their contact management system. And the brokerage required her to go, she was licensed, just got her license. And they hired her just for this purpose. They had top producer and that's all she was going to run. And when the vice president called and said, hey, she has to attend new agent training, the team leader said, no, she's not going to be doing anything, so I don't want her to attend it. And the response was, if you don't attend new agent training, you can take your license elsewhere. That's how important that brokerage felt training was. And even though she's not going to be talking to the public in general and all that good stuff, you still want them to know what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes the why is more important than what you're doing. An assistant who has a real estate license automatically qualifies as an independent contractor. Yeah. The real answer is false. There's rules that have to be met. There's rules that have to be met on the IRS side, if nothing else, but in the policy and procedures manual, it tells you exactly what needs to be done for them to be considered an independent contractor. We'll probably see some more things like that here in a second. RE/MAX is a member of the Employee Relocation Council. And again, the policy and procedures manual specifically shows that we are Employee Relocation Council. That means that we should get relocation. And if you're working with relocation, you need to know how they work and what's required for it, because they have special needs, if you will. I've worked with several of them. I've worked with relocation for rentals up in Austin. I've worked with relocation here in the Valley for different companies, for Border Patrol and et cetera. They put special requirements on that. If they're selling a house, there's ways it has to be handled. If they're buying a house, there's things that have to be done. One of the other things is, and my reason for including it here is, if you are talking to somebody about buying or selling, and you ask the right questions, if they say anything about relocation, you need to clarify and confirm that. Because it's very possible I could be working with them today, and tomorrow they call and say, hey, I'm sorry, the relocation company said that if I work with you, I can't get assistance. So I need to go to Debbie or whatever the case is, right? Because that's our relationship with them through the different relocation sections or companies. No individual ads may be ran without management approval. Individual ads. All right, Gustavo. And that's actually in the policy and procedures manual again, and it specifically says that individual ads without management approval. And please, when you see that, it's not so much, in my opinion, it's not so much the approval, it's having somebody else put another set of eyes on it. And I've told you before, I ran some ads that I wish somebody would have looked at before. They got exposure, they helped get my name out there, but it was not what I was looking for, the way I was looking for it. Right? So we want to make sure somebody else looks at them. After receipt of management approval, all specialty ads is at the associate's expense. In other words, we are responsible for our own advertising. Norma, there's a question in the chat about, does that include social media ads? And we haven't discussed that in detail, but I would just throw out that if, in my opinion, you're a seasoned agent, sometimes social media ads are spontaneous. But if it's a planned ad program, you might want to make sure you run that through somebody. I don't know what your thoughts are, ma'am.
Yeah, I think the idea behind the requirement is that if you do something, for example, there's agents that have done billboards or certain ad campaigns where they put out little taglines or things like that. If you're doing something, for example, that, you know, from either Remax or MLS, and you're sharing something, you know, a listing, you know, that meets all the basic requirements, you're just promoting, you know, check out this listing, and you're, you know, and you're meeting all the basic requirements, that's fine, because that's something that you do recurring maybe with each one of your listings. So we don't need to approve those. But if you do something like, you know, you're going to wrap your car, or you're going to do a billboard, or you're going to do some kind of a marketing campaign, like offer something. I mean, I've had several agents, for example, and I'll talk about this, where they say, hey, so-and-so's advertising this percentage of a commission. I want to do something like that. And my answer is, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to advertise. So you know, we're not going to advertise a certain percentage of a commission or something like that. So if you're going to advertise things that are not like your listings, then yes, run them by Mac or myself.
Hope that helps answer that. Where we at? All right, a little bit of movement. D's making a comeback. If you get knocked out. Each listing is entitled to postage on 40 pieces, either at the listing, the sale, or at the agent's choice. 40 pieces, 40 postcards, for example, and Remax Elite pays for it. 40 pieces. Is that true or false? That's true.
You kicked me out again.
Sorry about that. So that's, again, that's another thing with 40 pieces. That may not sound like a lot, but if you're hitting the homes around the property, or your sphere of influence, or something of that nature, your top 50, you know, that helps. It doesn't say they need to go to a specific area. It just says they'll help. And sending out a postcard for every listing that you receive for every listing that when you get it, for example, you send that out to your sphere of influence, you're letting them know that you're working. These are the people that know you, like you, and care about your success, and they want to see you up there. So they'll actually push that. All you have to do is keep them in the loop.
Yeah, I encourage you guys to take advantage of that. Even if you just did the 40, 25 or 40 and just did that every month, it's not going to cost you anything. So take advantage of it.
Can an unlicensed assistant show property?
I want to know who said
Unli-
yes.
Say again?
I said, I want to know who that one person that said yes.
I said it because I keep getting confused what yes or no, blue or red. So anyway,
Okay.
next time make
Okay.
no red, Mac, please.
Okay, all right. The, and that, please remember, unlicensed assistant, it doesn't matter what the situation is. I think I shared with you guys before that there was just 2 or 3 months ago, something like that, 4 months ago, there was one where an agent was fined by Trek because his wife opened up the door for the buyer. And the agent's response was, well, it was my wife. It doesn't matter. Her name's not on your license. It doesn't, you know. Sometimes the worst people you could deal with is family. So you don't want them in the midst of this. Does the Policy and Procedures Manual address RESPA, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act? Is that in the Policy and Procedures Manual? And the answer is yes. Good, cool. And if you notice, I highlighted the following actions are allowed on that, and that's on page 49. So on page 50, it actually covers the items that are allowed via RESPA, right? What title companies can do, mortgage companies can do, and et cetera, to help you with your open houses or marketing a property, things of that nature. And stay legal. Last one, new agent training is required according to the Policy and Procedures Manual. Yes, cool. And you actually have, if you take a look at it, it's in the Policy and Procedures Manual. It also says you have 3 months to do that in. But obviously, if you're trying to get in and get going, it's easier to try and knock it out as fast as possible. And we'll be working on those. Let's see who we have on the podium. Alex, Ethan, and who's that? All right, so if you
That's D.
okay, awesome. Oh, that's good, D. That's good. If you are first, second, or third, if you want to throw in the chat your private mailing address or best mailing address, I'll send you a little something when we wrap up today.
Nothing for the fourth place.
Nothing for the fourth place. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys' time today. Appreciate you guys' time today. This morning when we started, we covered just some highlights real quick. And I sometimes I do that just because there are things that are happening now. Like I said, within the last a couple of weeks, we've had 4 transactions where we've had old forms in there, old contracts, and that puts our clients at jeopardy because we didn't pay attention to it. And most of the time, you can't fix it because it's already been negotiated and it's gone to the title company, and the agent's like, oops, I didn't see that, or I didn't catch it. So upper right-hand corner all the time, 2021 is what we should see in there, and it should be 11/08/2021.
Guys,
Anybody have anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if I may add just a couple things. First of all, thank you guys. I know it's right before Christmas and a lot of us just mentally check out this time of year. So we've got 43 people on the call. So I really appreciate that. I think it says a lot of the agents that are, always just committed to staying on top of their business. But in the recent sort of weeks, just a couple things that have come up. first of all, if you guys are ever question, you know, how to do something or whether or not you should add something to an amendment, or you know, if you've got a sort of a technical question on your contracts, ask Mac or myself or the office manager, Nina and Corpus, or one of us before just, you know, like winging it or just making a decision. Because keep in mind, guys, that these are legal transactions, and we're, you know, clients trust us with really their money, right? Their earnest money, and so we don't want to mishandle anything. So if you've got any doubt in your mind of should I do it like this or should I do it like that, don't make the decision yourself. Ask Mac or myself. Sometimes we're, you know, busy with something or another. Send us a group message, you know, include Mac, myself, and, you know, whoever else. And then one of us will give you a response if, you know, if the other is busy, but don't just wing it. The other thing is that, you know, nothing is ever allowed to you know, we had a situation where a closing happened outside of a title company and without an attorney. Every transaction that you guys close has to be closed by an attorney, or it has to be closed by a title company. There is absolutely no exception whatsoever. Notary publics, you know, things like that. Absolutely, that is absolutely not ever acceptable. And then just the last thing, just because I've had a few instances where we've had really upset clients about one thing or another.